Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Fuentes, and I am the Policy and Communications Director for the California League of United Latin American Citizens, the largest and oldest Latino civil rights organization. The mission of the organization is to advance the economic condition, educational attainment, political influence, housing, health, and civil rights of the Latino population. Thank you for joining us here today for the Workers' Compensation Workshop, nuestro Sesión de Compensación de los Trabajadores. I'm now going to be introducing the speakers for today's workshop. Moderator, Miriam Aguilar Escobar. She currently serves as a member of the LULAC Foundation, where she has held several positions such as co-chair, vice chair, and secretary. She is the California LULAC State Deputy Director for Women and an active member of the Anaheim LULAC Council. She is the founder of the San Diego Education Council 3198, and in addition to her service to LULAC, her activism at local, state, and national levels has proven her leadership skills in education and civil rights. We have attorney Kenneth Martinson Gomez. He is a certified workers' compensation specialist. He went to UC Berkeley and then Santa Clara University for law. He fights for the rights of Latino injured workers and for the Latino community in general. He is the co-chair of the Latino Caucus, an organization of Latino worker comp attorneys. We have Lisa Berman Hernandez. She is proud to be a partner at Bender, Corlander, Hernandez, and Campbell. She advocates for the rights of those faced with uncertainties of the legal system and has done so for over 28 years. She practiced in Chicago, Illinois, and then San Bernardino before returning to her hometown of San Diego. For almost 20 years, Ms. Hernandez now concentrates solely on workers' compensation cases and representing the rights of injured workers. She works diligently to ensure that those who are confused and intimidated by the workers' compensation system become informed so that they can help to advocate for themselves in a system that seems to deny more benefits than it provides. Prior to her work as a workers' compensation applicant attorney, Ms. Hernandez was a prominent criminal defense attorney. She handled a wide array of matters from death penalty cases to representing juveniles and everything in between. Outside of work, Ms. Hernandez is most proud of her husband, Angel, and daughter, Madeline. Ms. Hernandez is very committed to her community, previously serving as Vice President of Education for Tiferet Israel Synagogue. Ms. Hernandez speaks Spanish and understands various cultures, which helps her clients feel more comfortable when she is advocating on their behalf. We also have attorney Jordan Gaytan, is a senior trial attorney with Arash Law, who has exclusively practiced California workers' compensation law since 2012. Mr. Gaytan is an aggressive, experienced litigator and advocate who is relentless in getting the best results for his clients. I will now be turning it over to Miriam. Thank you.
Could you please explain everybody what is workers' compensation?
Workers' compensation is an area of the law that gives, is supposed to give automatic benefits and automatic medical care, and also some retraining. And it's created by a statute, meaning somebody had to write it up and put it together and have the government of California approve it. And it's supposed to be where nobody's at fault. As long as you are at work and something happens that hurts you, then you have the right to open a claim and to reasonable medical care. And after that, you get an evaluation at which some monetary value or cash value for your case is determined. And at that point, you can decide to keep that medical care open and settle for a standard amount in biweekly payments, or you can try to do what is called a buyout. And that means that you'll get a premium of money on top of what the basic value of the case is to then go about managing your own medical care. So there's two ways to settle, but it's supposed to be automatic and everyone qualifies. You are documented or not, you have the same rights to file for workers' comp.
Lisa, would you like to add anything else?
I would. You know, the one thing that I think Ken and Jordan and Jason and I will be touching on, I think Moises as well, is the fear factor. I think that that's the most critical idea or concept to understand is there's a fear factor at so many levels, whether you're here with properly documented, you're here without documentation, it doesn't matter. I believe that the thought that if you report an injury will result in loss of job, loss of immigration status, loss of benefits, loss of family and home, that overarching fear by seeing what happens to other workers who dare to report their injuries is a most critical element of the workers' comp, the job of the workers' comp attorney especially for Latino workers.
Thank you. How about you, Jordan? And Attorney Jordan Gaytan.
Yeah, and I just wanted to introduce myself really quickly. I'm Jordan Gaytan out of Los Angeles with Arash Law, and I practice in catastrophic workers' compensation and then also personal injury crossover as well. But I do agree with what Lisa said. It's, completely about, destigmatizing the idea of filing a workers' compensation case for a lot of people. The workers' compensation laws were introduced to me as, understanding that it's a benefits delivery system, right? That's the way that it was originally set up for workplace injuries. And actually, it's like a social contract that exists between employers and employees that's legislated through the state of California that allows employers to deliver those benefits directly to the employees rather than have the employees litigate it in, civil court. It's in administrative law court. So it's all for the benefit of the workers. It's not for the benefit really it's half for the benefit of the employers, but it's mainly, to deliver medical benefits to injured workers.
Is Attorney, thank you so much, Jordan Gaytan. Jason Swanson available at the moment?
I'm sure he can talk. And just to clarify, Moises is an attorney and he had agreed to be,
Moises.
but Jason knows so much. And we have our president here, but if anything, since Moises had volunteered to be a panelist, I would more turn additional attention towards his way as he volunteered to be a panelist.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Lisa, you mentioned about the fear that people feel when they get hurt, they don't want to report. So what happened? What if my employer wants to retaliate against me?
So there are laws, civil laws against retaliation, as well as a provision within workers' compensation about that. All injured workers are entitled to workers' compensation benefits, regardless of immigration status. And it doesn't matter if they're lawfully employed here. They don't, some employers don't require the I-4 forms, the I-9 forms prior to hiring them. However, oftentimes there's always that fear that, well, if I request benefits after I'm injured, they're going to find out, or I'm not qualified because I don't have a valid social security number. It is irrespective of valid social security numbers, whether or not you get the benefits. Your employer can't threaten you with that. They can, if they find out that you don't have a valid social security number, which is a fear that most people have when they come to me and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't have a valid social security number. We don't provide that to the employer, so they cannot usually find that out. Now, there are some benefits that they won't be entitled to if they don't have a valid social security number at the end of the case, but they will still be entitled to all benefits of medical treatment. And that is very important for people to understand. Now, once an employer becomes aware that an employee is not legally able to work in the United States, that employee cannot be hired back, but they cannot be denied benefits.
Moises, Vasquez, would you like to add anything else?
Sure. Taking off from what Jordan said workers' comp is a social contract. It's called the grand bargain. A injured worker, and it covers anybody that does work for somebody else, whether you're called an independent contractor or paid in cash or a day laborer or work by the piece or work on the farm or work through a contract laborer. It covers everybody. Whether you're documented or not, it covers everybody. It's called the grand bargain, where you're not allowed to sue your employer in civil court for negligence, having to show that somebody on the behalf of the employer did something wrong. You don't have to show that anything went wrong. You just have to show that you got injured in the course of your work, in the scope and course of your work, doing something for your employer. Sometimes it could be even off-site. It could be at home. It could be your employer sent you to do a special trip. So if you're doing labor, working for somebody, it doesn't matter if you are being paid in the form of rent or food, you are considered an employee. There's some limitations for some domestic employees, people that work in a home, limited so many hours, but generally it covers everybody that does work for anybody else, irrespective of how you get paid. Reminds me of a case that I showed someone that had a franchise contract, a coverall. A Mexicana client up in Santa Maria had bought a coverall franchise and paid money for it and supposedly was her own business owner. The contract was such a bad contract and she had no control. I went to court in workers' comp, eventually up on appeal. She was determined to be an employee. So even if you have a contract that says you're not an employee, if you work for somebody, you got injured in the course, you should see somebody because you should be and probably are covered by the workers' comp system. Okay.
Let me can I jump in real quick,
Go ahead,
Moises,
Lisa.
just on what you were saying? A lot of times employers try to misclassify the employee, and it doesn't, and they call them independent contractors, even issue 1099s. That is not a determinative factor as to whether
What is a
somebody is an
1099?
employee. 1099 is if you are considered an independent contractor, you're working and going to say, I will pay my own taxes. I will take care of it. I am coming to you to work by myself. You don't have to hire me as an employee, thereby not provide workers' comp coverage. That is, but yet your employer is telling you where to be, what time to be there, how many hours they have to work. The tools that you're using are being provided by the employer. The car that you get to the job site is being provided by the employer. All of those are indicators of the person who's performing the work being an employee as opposed to an independent contractor. So that misclassification, people come to me and say, well, I'm a 1099, or as Moises said, I get paid under the table for my work. If somebody's telling you where to be, when to be there, how long you need to be there, and various other indicators of being an employee, if it smells like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You're an employee and you're entitled to those benefits.
What I wanted to add is that we're all saying, don't be afraid. Call our office. I put it in the chat. You don't have papers, call us. You think you don't have rights, call us. We'll worry about the legal arguments. And we're explaining some of the details, but don't exclude yourself from calling us. That's the worst thing you can do.
Also, every workers' comp appeals board, every workers' comp court has a person that's called information and assistance officer. And they are there to help people that do not have lawyers. You can call them, set up an appointment, you go and talk to them, they'll help you, give you an orientation as to what your rights are, even assist in filing for a hearing if you need to have a hearing. So every workers' comp appeals board, every location has an information assistance officer paid by the state, a state employee, not paid by the insurance company or any employer, that's there to help people that do not have a lawyer.
What happens if my employer is uninsured and I am hurt on the job?
I think that
Jordan, you want to
for
go there?
Jordan.
Because you've got,
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to follow along. Lisa can answer too, but I thought Jordan can pick up on that, so we kind of rotate. Jordan,
Yeah.
why don't you go ahead and respond to that first?
Okay, yeah. So I believe the question was, what happens if my employer is uninsured?
Correct.
So there is a special fund. It's called the Uninsured Employers Benefits Trust Fund. That if your if your employer does not carry workers' compensation insurance, you can file against that fund. It's through the state, and they will, open your case, and you can have benefits administered through that fund. They will also potentially bring in your employer to make them possibly personally liable for your workers' compensation case. In addition to that, there are special rules in the labor code governing employers that don't carry workers' compensation insurance, and you are actually allowed to bring a corresponding civil case against them as well. So it is a very, very, complicated thing when employer is not insured. And so because they're required to by law, you have a lot of remedies available to you, meaning you have many causes of action and many types of lawsuits that you can bring against them. So that's especially a reason to bring a suit against an uninsured employer, because it's also not just for your personal safety, but for the safety of all other employees going forward, because who knows how many employees that employer has, and if they're operating without insurance, maybe you just injured your knee or leg, and it's a minor injury this time, but who knows what can happen the next time. So it's very important to bring those cases forward.
Am I entitled to an interpreter if I do not speak English well?
not
Well,
only are you
Oh, go
entitled,
ahead, Lisa. I'm
Sorry.
not going to cut you off again, but I suggest Lisa and then Moises talk on that.
not only are you entitled to an interpreter at all legal proceedings, at any informal legal proceeding like a deposition or some kind of other interview, you're also entitled to an interpreter at all medical appointments, so that you can ensure that what you're saying is transmitted to the doctor and to defense attorneys or judges in your language. And it doesn't matter what the language is.
Do I have to go to my own doctor, or do the company will send me to their own doctor
Go ahead, Moises.
to evaluate the case?
You have to choose a doctor within what's called the Medical Provider Network, the MPN. Since I think 2003, the insurances throughout the state have been able to set up their own medical provider network, have their own list of doctors. However, if you don't get sent out to see a doctor, go to your own doctor, go to urgent care, go to somebody and let them know that you got injured at work. But yes, you have to choose from a list of doctors that the insurance has. There are exceptions to that, but it gets somewhat complicated.
How fast do I have to start a clinic?
I wanted to jump in on that and also go back to the language rights of our community. Everybody has a right to an interpreter, and it's not appropriate and it's not legal for them to make your grandson interpret at an appointment. They're not trained. They're not supposed to. They can help, of course, but the insurance company is supposed to provide a certified interpreter, not somebody that came out of Jack in the Box and as a side job says, yo hablar español, ¿cómo está tú? That is not the legal standard. And this is very important to remember, because a lot of people accept from a doctor's office a secretary, a receptionist, or the messed up Spanish of a doctor who thinks he speaks it. Communication is critical. And if you don't communicate in your own language, how are you going to trust that the doctor knows what's going on? And we fight like that for crazy. We get doctors' reports taken away. We cancel trials. We do a lot of things if they do not provide a Spanish-speaking certified interpreter to our community. We won't put up with it.
Para las personas que están escuchando y necesitan traducción, estaremos con mucho gusto ayudándoles. Quiero, lo que está diciendo el abogado Kenneth Martinson es que este grupo de la compensación de trabajadores está obligado a proveerle con un traductor calificado, certificado, no cualquier persona, no su hijo, no su hermano, no su primo, sino alguien que está completamente educado, está certificado. Esto es muy importante. Kenneth, go ahead, please. Anything else,
Yeah.
Kenneth?
Y quería agregar que uno tiene, digamos, 5 años, fecha límite para entablar su demanda. Y es lo mejor que lo reportes enseguida, pero hay tipos de accidente que la gente desconoce. Es un accidente de desgaste por la rutina del trabajo. Digamos que
Could you
uno
please say the
trabaja en
same
los
thing in English
campos.
now?
Oh, sure. So when you file a case, you normally have about 5 years tops to get it in there in front of the court, but you should try to do it as soon as possible because there are real problems if you don't do it within a year. And the other thing that people don't realize is that not only can you claim one day you fell down and you hurt your knee, or one day you lifted a box and your back hurt, but if your job requires constant kneeling and constant lifting, and you develop like a permanent bend in your back, or permanent inflammation, permanent arthritis that wasn't there, you can file what is called a cumulative trauma case or repetitive work case. It's not just the secretaries that wipe out their hands on the keyboard, but it's a carpenter wiping out his arms and back, jackhammers. Housekeepers are a lot of these cases. You know, the people that take care of our hotel rooms, lifting all the mattresses that are so heavy and they have to do 30 rooms a day. It's hard enough for one of us to remember to change our bed. Imagine somebody being in charge of changing 40 beds in a day within 8 hours, and God knows what the room's condition is like, and they have to get it done and fast. So it's very important that you understand this, that you can say, probably my work made me feel bad, and it's not just because you're out of shape and didn't go to the gym. If your job leaves you sore, you have a case.
And it's not for the person who's claiming the injury to decide whether or not they got injured at work. If you have an inkling that you got injured at work, just the thought, maybe this work created this condition or contributed to this condition, there are doctors that will come in and do what are called medical legal evaluations and make the determination. We just have to have them come to us so we can help them make the claim. Whether or not the claim then gets picked up by the insurance company is what we fight for.
Could you tell me more about the essential duties in a job? If the job is mandated to give some type of accommodation?
We'll stay kind of quiet on that because we don't necessarily do employment law, and that's a different facet. But certainly within workers' comp, you have the usual and normal job that you do. And if somehow the doctor says, well, at least for a couple months, don't lift more than 20 pounds, then the hope and the responsibility of the employer is really to try to find a modified job where they can do mostly everything, but they might not be able to lift more than 20 pounds and somebody else can do it. Then they're offered modified work. And that is something that should be offered. Sometimes the restrictions are too high, meaning not too high, but too restrictive, such that employer says, okay, don't come into work, stay home, get better. And then you have temporary disability benefits, which is kind of like a form of state disability, but it's disability that the workers' comp pays. So you're not gonna go starving if you're put off work by a doctor and your case is accepted. so there's permutations of all that where things go wrong, but that's the basic idea. And we do work closely with employment law attorneys that they can investigate whether there's a proper process of accommodating the person, if any attempt to terminate them because eventually they're excluded from a job because they want to say the doctor gave them too many restrictions. There's also laws against that. And so we refer that out. Some of our attorneys do both, and I wait for comments from other attorneys if, of course, on this issue of keeping people at work.
The situation, I think, arises in that scenario where someone's been treating, the doctor takes them off of work, says you can't do any work, and then at some point says you can go back and try some modified work. The employer, as Kenneth says, should take you back, and there's certain rules that they have to and what they have to do, and that's sort of outside the workers' comp arena as to their obligations under the fair employment statutes, the fair employment federal and state statutes. But certainly if you're out there as an injured worker and you get sent back to work or get sent back to modified work and your employer doesn't take you back and TTD gets cut off, you need to see probably a comp lawyer and an employment lawyer because there's things that cross over into both arenas. The workers' comp lawyer can either look at to see if there really is modified work available or whether those restrictions require them to pay you TTD and keep you on the workers' comp benefit system.
Tell what is TTD?
Temporary total disability. When you're released to modified work, they call it or partial temporary disability. But if your employer doesn't have it, modified work, the insurance is supposed to pay you. There might be some instances where your doctor says you can go back to 4 hours a day or 2 hours a day initially. You're entitled to workers' comp benefits on what's called a wage loss basis. The employer pays you certain part of your salary because you're working part-time and not full-time. The insurance has to pay you the difference, but it gets convoluted and somewhat complex what credits are due for what the employer paid you and how much the insurance has to come up with. So if you're in that situation, either contact the information assistance officer, one of the workers' comp lawyers, or an employment lawyer to make sure you know what you're doing.
If I can just jump on Moises' comments and Ken's, one of the things that we need our clients, our injured workers, to look out for is the pseudo modified duty. What I mean by that is they send you back to work and taking the hotel maintenance, housekeeping staff that hurts their right arm, can only use their left arm. And they said, okay, well, we're going to, reduce the number of rooms you have to do, but they still have to do all the work that they would have otherwise done with both hands, now with one. How is that valid modified work? You can't lift a mattress with just one arm and change the sheets, but yet these are the kinds of work restrictions and then the follow-up work duties that a lot of clients are given. For another example is oftentimes a doctor will put in notes, restrictions like no bending, no stooping. Well, what does that mean? No bending, no stooping. There's no real discussion about the extent or the manner of how to implement those work restrictions. And the clients go back to work and they want to be a good employee. So they themselves just ignore the work restrictions or put themselves in compromising situations. And then the employer will come back and say, you didn't follow the work restrictions. It's your fault. And that it happens a lot. We have to be vigilant, but we can only be we can only fight as hard as the information we receive. So if our clients don't tell us, if our clients don't trust us, then we are unable to promote their interests as fully as we need to. So I think that from the beginning, it's very important that, and I'm sure Ken and Moises and Jordan can all attest, and Sandy, that the initial meeting has to be between the lawyer and their attorney. Be careful of attorneys who send out representatives to go meet with somebody at a Starbucks or something like that. Make sure that the person who you find to represent you is legitimate and is the one who's going to be handling your case. There are a lot of bad law firms in the state of California that accept workers' comp cases and don't fight. They see what kind of money they can get right away, sweep the case under the rug and send them on their way, much to the peril of the injured worker, and oftentimes taking advantage of the cultural problems that come about that somebody who's not a certified lawyer or I'm not a certified specialist. I know Ken is, but it's all I do is workers' compensation. I just haven't gone so far as taking the test. Jordan, I don't know if you are, and I think Sandy is. So that you need to make sure that the person who you speak with is the lawyer who's going to help you, not a hearing workers. Go ahead.
Let me chime in on that. I want to acknowledge that there's a question that I want to answer and have answered by the group. And if you can put more questions in the chat, o si tienen algunas preguntas, pueden poner algo en el chateo y
There
todos
is a
hablamos
question.
español, por favor. Pero tenemos una pregunta question that comes from Anthony Noriega that we're going to touch on. But I like what Lisa's saying. You want to get and talk to a legit lawyer. But the question I'm going to read, and if Sandy or anybody else wants to jump in, but there's a question from Anthony that says, if my case is denied, can I appeal the denial? I kind of spoke about Sandy, and maybe if you can introduce your important role.
Oh,
And maybe answer the question for Anthony, please.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Sandy Rocca. I work, I'm an applicant's attorney in Salinas, California, and I'm currently the California Applicant Attorney Association president, the first Latina president. Yay. Very proud of all the support I've received from the Latino caucus as part of the CAW. And thank you very much for inviting us to speak with you. I know that back when we were in person, my law firm has always supported LULAC. We have done the black and white ball in Salinas, and we've had such a great turnout. My law firm has paid, sponsored for all of the paralegals and attorneys to attend, and we really have enjoyed the events. I love the great work you do for scholarships for students and just overall great work. So thank you to the organization. As far as appealing a denial, yes, if your case is denied, generally I would recommend an injured worker seek an attorney, just because there are different reasons for the denial. There are legal reasons, there are factual reasons, there are medical reasons. And generally the process to do the appeal is where you see a second opinion doctor. It's called a panel qualified medical evaluation. And then that doctor can make some comments on whether or not the injury is work-related. And even if your dispute involves something other than medical issues, I don't know all the possible reasons, but you would be able to proceed to trial in front of a workers' compensation judge. And then that judge would make a determination on whether or not your injury would be work-related or not. So there is an appeal process. Obviously, if you get a denial from the judge, there are some, appellate court rights and so on. But the general answer is, if an injured worker gets a denial letter, there are ways to appeal it. So thank you all for inviting us to speak with you. We appreciate it.
Kenneth,
Thank you, Sandy. And I open the dialogue for LULAC and CAW to share educational information like this, and this will be recorded. And Miriam and Kim will have it in storage. There's another question from the chat. Can I read that, Miriam?
Yes.
It's actually was directed to me.
Cuando tienes un accidente de trabajo y te ponen en workers' compensation, compensación del trabajador, tienes que contratar un abogado para que le puedan dar un buen seguimiento a tu caso. Parece ser que estas personas no tienen un abogado por el momento.
Bueno, al 100% yo recomiendo que contraten un abogado porque tenemos mucha ética los que somos miembros de CA, de la cual Sandy es la presidenta, y deben buscar que por lo menos sean miembros de CA o que sean especialistas. Si uno no contrata abogado, ¿quién va a ganar? La aseguranza, porque ellos te van a decir qué es lo que puedes reclamar, qué es importante, qué no es importante. ¿Por qué? Porque quieren ahorrar. Ok, y el abogado es que te va a guiar y canalizar hacia un resultado positivo y no negativo, porque la aseguranza te va a manipular. Si tú llegas y dices, me siento gorda, bueno, y ellos van a decir, bueno, eso es tu culpa, come mejor. Pero si estás gorda porque ya subiste 15 libras o 30 libras porque ya no puedes caminar, porque las rodillas no te responden, eso viene siendo parte de las consecuencias y responsabilidades de la aseguranza. Pero una persona que ignora todo esto pierde mucho, pierde mucho. Yo no miro como una persona no contrate un abogado, pero no bueno, no los que están en la televisión promoviéndose, ¿ok? No quiero nombrar las compañías, plataformas, pero hay muchos que solo salen a pescar y aprovechar de nuestra comunidad. Ok, tienen que investigar como Lisa dice, tienes que conocer al abogado por ley, no asistente, no la representante guapo o sexy que te convenzca solo porque es buen parecido y no porque tiene el título de abogado.
Muchísimas gracias. ¿Quiere agregar algo más, Lisa? ¿O Jordan?
Es correcto. A tener un abogado no es mágico. En teoría es un sistema de proveer beneficios y uno los debe de tener tocante a la lastimada que uno sufre. Pero la realidad es muy, muy diferente. Y a tener un abogado, además que es abogado, no es algo mágico. El abogado tiene que saber, como dice Esteban, saber lo que está haciendo, o Kenneth, disculpe, que sabe lo que está haciendo. Si es experto, si es miembro de CA, si es miembro de otros grupos que ayudan a los trabajadores y que tienen una conciencia. Porque, como dijo Lisa, hay otros abogados, bufetes de abogados que realmente no les interesa a trabajar el caso. Como dijo Kenneth, una persona puede tener unas cosas que no son completamente debidas al accidente, pero fueron agravadas o aceleradas por el accidente. Diabetes, alta presión, problemas con el corazón. Y si uno no sabe que si es parte debido a la lastimada, sea de la lastimada específica o de una trauma continuamente, uno tiene derechos al tratamiento y compensación por esas cosas que raíz viene de parte del trabajo, parte de generación, parte de la edad, parte de otras lastimadas que tuviste en otros trabajos. Por eso es muy importante tener un abogado que está capacitado y no nomás a tener un abogado.
To jump on Moises, también es un aviso que el sistema de Workers' Compensation de Trabajadores Compensación es muy lento y no va a hacer respuestas o soluciones inmediatamente. Necesita luchar por todos los derechos para los trabajadores. Es un sistema muy complicado y muy peligroso si no tiene bastante representación en frente del juez, en frente de la aseguranza, en cuáles partes de su reclamo.
Jordan?
Go ahead,
Oh, go
Jordan.
ahead.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, I just wanted to add that on denied cases, you really want an attorney that's going to fight for you. I mean, in different parts of the state, denied cases are handled differently. And at least in my part of the state, there are many, many, many cases that are denied. So I would always encourage you to find a qualified workers' compensation attorney that is able to represent you on a denied case, and they may be able to get you lien treatment as well that will support your ability to get benefits through the Employment Development Department with the state as well. So just because you receive a denial, there's some employers that will make misrepresentations to the insurance about your injury. There are some insurance carriers that just like to deny cases. So it's very important to fight if you have a denied case. Don't let the denial be the final say. Get an attorney.
Right. We just want you to take from this that everybody has rights. Todos tenemos derecho, así no hablemos el inglés, no tengamos papeles. Todo el mundo, everybody can file a workers' comp case, okay? Call us and you find out how. It's not impossible. We'll do the heavy lifting. You just got to get better. I have a couple questions.
Can I pipe in? A denial by the insurance company is really nothing. It's a private company saying they don't want to pay you benefits. It's up to a judge eventually to decide. And even if a judge decides against you, there's appeals from that judge's decision. There's an appeal process if a judge decides against you. But hopefully by that time, if you're going to go to trial on your case, you should have a lawyer. You can see the other side. The insurance company has a lawyer. So you need to have a lawyer if you're going to court. Certainly, if you haven't got one while you're getting your treatment and either negotiating by yourself, if you're going to court and going to be in front of a judge, look at the other side. Why do they have a lawyer? Do the same.
So I was going to jump in before we close up, and Kim will tell us when we have to stop. But there's a question by one of our audience, and it says, I was working part-time at UPS, and while I was at work, I suffered a stroke, ruptured aneurysm of a blood vessel in the brain. As a doctor put a 20-pound weight restriction on me going back to work, the company had me apply for an ADA position. This was last year in May. I still have not been given a position, and I'm still currently not working. And I do not have any medical insurance at all, and I'm stuck with hospital bills. Anthony, thank you for your question. So many people are going through this. They don't know about workers' comp. They don't know that you don't have to pay anything up front. You don't pay for $300 an hour visit. It's a free consultation, and the entire work is done on a percentage basis. So who would like to tackle that question first from my colleagues?
I'm willing to take that. A stroke could be a work-related injury, if that's part of your question. And that may be a little more difficult than maybe like a back injury that was witnessed, you filed right away. But the fact that you were presumably doing very physical work, and I'm sure a stressful job trying to get all these packages delivered, the physical strenuous nature of the job, you could absolutely file a workers' compensation case for the stroke. And if you're ultimately able to prove that it was work-related, then you would be entitled to a medical award under the workers' compensation system to help you with your medical bills. They could, your attorney would presumably explain to the providers that you're pursuing a workers' compensation case, so the providers could request reimbursement from the insurance company. I'll let anybody else jump in too if they want to add more.
There is a
Definitely,
question
if the stroke happened at work as opposed to happening at home, you need to look into it. Even if a stroke happened at home, depending on your work and when the symptoms started to occur, a stroke that happened at home or on the way home could be work-related. So if you've suffered a serious injury that possibly in your mind, in your conscience, in your heart, you think had something to do with work, even a little bit, I think the standard is the crumbs of the crust of a cake, all right? So we just have to show that a little bit, because again, it's supposed to be a benefit delivery system to take you out of the civil litigation system. So even if work had a little bit to do with it, your medical treatment will be covered. You may not get a barrel of money because most of your condition may not be to work, but you get the medical treatment. If that person's concern is I don't have insurance, I've been off of work for a year, see a workers' comp lawyer. If it looks like it might be a workers' comp case, do it.
Miriam,
Kenneth,
did you want to jump in?
there is a question on the chat that I would like for you to answer. It is in Spanish. ¿Qué es la ley con respecto a los que trabajan de sus hogares para sus patronas? Which is the law regarding the people that work in their own homes?
You need to talk to an attorney. For almost any question you have, talk to an attorney. Don't get advice from el vecino o dicen por ahí. Talk to an attorney, somebody who works in the home, like a nanny or housekeeper. There are special criteria to meet to get the workers' comp benefits. If you're doing some type of informal work, de salen jales, you should probably keep a record, a calendar of who you're working for and how many hours, because a lot of the study of who's going to come into workers' comp when they do informal things like sometimes clean a house, sometimes do gardening, sometimes do side work, is how many hours you worked in a given month or a little bit longer, but let's use a month for an example, and how much you made for the person where you got injured. So you absolutely have right. Trabajadores del hogar tienen todos los derechos posibles, solo hay criterios y cosas diferentes, distintas, porque es un trabajo informal. Pero siempre hemos impulsado leyes a favor de las trabajadoras domésticas y tenemos un nexo muy grande con California Domestic Workers Association.
I would like to know if there are any more questions. Kenneth, did you get any extra questions?
I think the one that you covered in Spanish was the last one. Some people were actually, how can I talk to you? But I think you're best served by contacting our main office, which I put in the chat. But we are a professional organization. We self-monitor. We make sure that we're ethical. We try to encourage that we're a specialist. And we also, like you heard, watch out for rateros. They're basically attorneys that want to rip off the community just because they can get over on their own brown people. That's messed up. So you want good assistance, you want legit assistance, call our office, and it's 916-444-5155. I put in the chat already. And that is our state office of California Applicant Attorney Association, which basically means in everyday words, we're the workers' comp attorneys for California's workers. Call us. Call them and tell them where you're at. You can even ask for a specialist. We have an entire directory. So for those of you who are community leaders, we just want to be remembered as your resource and say, what's workers' comp? I'm going to call Miriam, or I'm going to call that number I got. That's the main thing you should remember.
I would like to hear from Jason Swanson. I know that he has a book, he wrote a book. Maybe he would like to just present it quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize for going off video. I'm trying to pick up my mother-in-law, La Suegra, no? So I work for Ford and Wallach workers' compensation firm in LA, and I'm not an attorney, but Scott Ford and Cheryl Wallach have put together this book called The Union Steward's Guide to California Workers' Compensation. And it's a tool not only for union stewards. The reason we called it the book, The Union Steward's Guide, is because, probably 85 to 90% of the cases we take are union members. Our staff are also union members. We're represented by Teamsters Local 986. And the book is also the textbook that Scott Ford and Cheryl Wallach use in their class at LA Trade Tech College on workers' compensation, and they have one coming up in the spring. If anyone's interested in the book, I'd be happy to send you guys a copy of it. Unfortunately, I can't read the chat, but if you send me an email with the address, be happy to get it out to you. My email address is jswanson@fordwallach.com. That's JSWANSON@FORDWALLACH.com. And I'd be happy to get the book out to you. As most of you guys know, Scott and Cheryl are very active in Con. I believe Scott is the current secretary. And just glad to be on this call and glad to be a resource to anyone in the LA area that has any questions regarding workers' compensation.
Thank you. We are getting close to our ending, so I would like to see if you want to say any extra information, any of you, or if the most important, if you have any other question. Si tiene alguna otra pregunta, por favor, hágala. Vamos a terminar nuestra programación, pero estamos para servirles. Este es el grupo de la Liga de Latinos Americanos y estamos contentos de que podemos prestarles un servicio, darles la información. No tenga miedo, usted tiene derechos y para eso están los abogados y tenemos muy buenos abogados en este panel.
If I can mention, I just want to acknowledge that Brenda Camarena is here. She's one of the people out in the community providing excellent service to the community of Marin. Many topics of immigration, but primarily mental health. Who doesn't need mental health support? That's one of our goals of our organization. We just don't go out and run a practice, but we want to make sure that we're safe and healthy, mentally speaking. Thanks to Sandy, our president. It's important that legal professionals also take care of themselves. And Brenda has shown Spanish just for mental health. And go ahead. Oh, I thought somebody else was going to speak. And I just want to recognize Alberto Torrico's here. He's an important statewide Latino leader. And again, he's somebody to follow for nonprofits, for teachers, for workers' comp folks. He really cares about making sure that Sacramento understands what the Latino community goes through. So I just want to acknowledge those participants as well.
If I may, real quickly, I want to make sure everybody is aware that the people who are on this call, Ken and Sandy and Jordan, and the firm that Jason works for, and Moises especially, that all of you are just top in the field. You are well represented by any one of them, and should not hesitate if you're in LA, if you're up north, to reach out to any of those attorneys.
Kimberly?
I just want to thank, you all for agreeing to be a part of this workshop panel. And for those of you who want a recording of this entire workshop, we will make sure to send that to you. I am going to share my screen here. For those of you who do want the recording of this specific workshop, please email us at kfuentes.lulac@gmail.com. And how Kenneth let you all know, pueden conseguir buenos abogados llamando al 916-444-5155. You can find good attorneys calling 916-444-5155. And for all of the rest of the attorneys that also attended here today, I will be hoping to collect your information to provide those to the attendees that were participating here today. I definitely am extremely grateful for you all for providing this information to our community. It's vital information for a lot of us to know, and definitely thank you. I will hand it over to Miriam now.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It really has been a great experience. It's obvious that you are highly qualified attorneys and you have your heart in what you are doing. This is a very dear issue to me because I know that many of my families, the parents of these children or the workers in the school, sometimes they get hurt and they are afraid to talk. They are really scary. And I also fully aware that sometimes they are retaliated in the work. So I appreciate what you are doing. Education is what really will save us. Education and resources. And this is the reason that we are together here. Together we can make changes. Please don't be afraid. Look for LULAC. The California League of United Latin American Citizens hopes that the workshop presented to you today help our community in case of an accident happening to you. We appreciate your participation tonight, especially to Attorney Kenneth Martinson and the beautiful team that he incorporated: Lisa Hernandez, Jordan Gaytan, Moises Vasquez. If I am missing Jason Swanson,
And
please,
Sandy, our
Kenneth,
president.
if I am forgetting somebody. And
Oh,
who?
I just want to acknowledge that she's a Latina, proud Latina, and the first Latina
Did I say
president of our
Moises
association.
Vasquez? So thank you so much for being here tonight, and until next time, because we are looking forward to continue educating our community. Thank you for being here tonight and for your hard work. Se puede.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Amen.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Thank you.